Live.
All right. Hello and welcome to another week, not live from the Kingdom Games studio. It is the first of the month, the first Thursday of the month, and that means we are live from Stephen Dinelli's luxurious home domicile.
Yes.
Welcome to another week of The Wolf and the Lion. Stephen, how are you today?
I am exceptional. Hello, community. I'm Stephen Dinelli, art director for Kingdom Games, and I'm pleased to be with you this beautiful Thursday afternoon in Texas. Sun is shining, and though the weather's a little cold, we're only getting up to mid 60s.
Yeah, it's very cold. It's
Yeah.
too cold for Texas.
Oh, Chris, wait till the summer when we hit 110.
I'm excited. I like the summer.
It's
I like hot.
It is an odd experience. You need to wear a sweater or hoodie when you're in the office because the air conditioning is so intense. And then when you're outside, it's 110.
Love it. I'm down.
All
Sounds
right.
like fun.
Trying to
What's
think
been going
of.
on this week?
We're still exploring the Sinai Peninsula, somewhere around 2800 BC. And you may notice that my camera goes in and out of focus. I have just a cheap Microsoft camera, and it likes to, there's no way to turn off the autofocus, so
Nice.
it's kind of lame.
Hello, Hypertronic. Welcome to the chat.
Hey, Hypertronic, how's it going?
We're in strike team mode, working on some patches, working on some cool stuff. Any cool things you want to discuss from this week, or keeping everything secret for now?
Oh, no, we should tell the community about that. So community, we've nicknamed it the Patch of Awesomeness. I
I
believe
like that.
Eric gets credit for that one.
That's a good one.
And
Fan.
what we're doing is responding to all the feedback from the community. We are retooling the front end of the game, and we are doing a deep dive optimization pass, and we're improving AI across the board. And we're looking to have that out, I want to say before the end of February, but it is going to be a doozy of a patch.
Very exciting.
Yes,
And we don't have a formal release date yet, do we? But we have a target date.
We have a target date. Actually, let me look at the calendar here. And I'm going to say the target date is Monday the 22nd.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking it was too.
Yeah, it's pretty
Very
close
soon.
to around there.
Yeah, very soon.
Yes, but it is going to be really exciting. The optimization is going incredibly well. And probably the biggest thing that we're doing is we've taken the game and we've updated it to Unity 5. So across the board there are improvements. And I really look forward to the community to seeing it and experiencing 5.
Yeah, it's a pretty big change. It doesn't sound like much, but that engine upgrade's a big deal. You got some major performance increases coming, and of course other fun stuff. But why spoil the surprise right now?
That's right. We probably said too much, and I'll be having a conversation tomorrow with the other directors.
So it's another week of the Wolf and the Lion. We were at PAX last weekend. We did some fun stuff, saw some cool games, talked to some cool people. Anything inspiring you this week? Gonna draw anything related to PAX or anything we saw, or you got your own inspirations this week?
I got my own inspirations. I
Very
actually
exciting.
want to keep it simple. I'm thinking just some Egyptian-inspired ruins lost somewhere in the Sinai, and I've actually been drawing for the last 10 minutes, so I've already got something started. But before we do that, I want to talk about what we did last month and show you what I did for the completion of the Temple of Isis, as we're calling it.
The Temple of Isis?
Yes, the Temple of Isis.
It's not the same ISIS I'm thinking of, is it?
No, actually, No, different ISIS.
Okay.
There we go.
Just wanted to clarify. Oh,
ISIS.
awesome.
Yes, Isis, the Egyptian goddess Isis. Oh, this is interesting. I'm just going to close this. So we'll talk about that in a moment. Make sure I can get this in the screen. There we go. So everyone can see the extent of it. And so here we are. This is a finished image of the Temple of Isis. We started this last month, probably put it in about 90 minutes. I'm going to turn off some layers here. And Chris, do you think it'd be beneficial if everyone saw the layers as well?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's definitely beneficial. I know you merge a lot of them, but I think it's definitely cool. Yeah, like when we see the either the cloud and the overlay and everything.
Yep, I actually kept them. Is that going to work? Okay, that'll work.
Steven is one of the many developers at our studio. He is the art director, and he's responsible for concept art, among many other responsibilities. What else have you worked on, Steven? I want to say everything, but...
Well, I was contributed quite a bit to 5. I can't take credit for concept art on 5. That goes to Manuel Gomez. If you go to artstation.com and do a search for Manuel, you'll see some of his work. And he is exceptional, without a doubt. Beautiful imagery. He did all the character work. When I arrived at the studio, characters were in a good situation. It was the environments and the maps themselves that were still needing a lot of attention. And for the last 10 months of the project, that is where I focused the majority of my energy. And then I'd say the last 2 months was certainly on marketing and advertising, creating a lot of art.
Yes, a lot of art.
Yes. So we can see the layers here, and I'm guessing about right there is where we left the image 4 weeks ago. And I put in probably another 6 hours, and some of the things I did. So I have what I call a tint layer here, and all that's really doing is lightening up some of the dark in the background, and I do that to just bring the foreground forward. And I've got something called Fix, and it looks like I've just touched up the top of the temple here. And then I have the image of Isis. And the image of Isis is just a photo that I found on the internet of Isis that I liked with the wings. And it looks like she has a chair on her head. I don't know much about Egyptology, but I'm sure that's relevant. So I adjusted that image to black and white and just set it to overlay and adjust the levels. It works well. And once I get it to this point, I go in on top of it and I start painting. Maybe I'll zoom in just to so you can see some of that detail. And it was at this point I started to get a little carried away with the rocks, and not so much tightening them up, but I was really enjoying just the experience of drawing with paint, and it was fun. I liked it. Now this next layer I have is a color layer, and you can see what that's doing, and that's just warming up a bit of the foreground and getting a little more blue in that stormy sky in the background. And then I have a darken layer, and that I've gone in and just increased the depth in a few spots. Kind of when you're painting, it's very much about pushing and pulling, pushing the background back and pulling the foreground forward. And then we have another layer of paint, and this is where I start to get much more detailed and bringing out those highlights and light areas, as you can see in here. And looks like I added some palm trees. Well, I call it trees, but just a little bit of green to help break up the desert. And even though we're in the Sinai, Egypt, and the Middle East, some nearly 3,000 years ago, up to 1,000 years ago, that part of the world was much wetter than it is now. Some people know that, not a lot of people do, but that environment was greener. It was a lot easier to farm, do all that stuff. Okay, the next layer is just a colored dodge layer, and you can see that really just brings out some life here in the temple. And I'll turn this to just a normal layer, and you can see it's a little bit of gray, some hot orange to indicate like there's some sort of fire inside the temple. And I just set that to color dodge. Works nicely. And I think we have another darken layer just to get a little more depth in there, and then a final tint layer to darken up the sky and get a little more drama. And those are the layers that I used to create this second concept for our Temple of Isis somewhere in the Sinai.
I'm surprised it took that many layers, because I saw you merging a ton of stuff. Is it pretty usual to have so many layers by the end, or not?
I left the layers just so folks in the community who were interested in how I work in Photoshop and may want to try some things themselves, they could see how I do it. But usually once I do a paint layer, I'll flatten it.
Okay.
All right. So let's open up, I'm calling Egypt 3. See if we can get this in a good position. There we go. And while I'm doing this, I keep the two previous concepts that I've done on the program just as reference, and they're drastically different. This first Egypt concept is 90 minutes, and then the second one is probably a total of about 7.5 hours, so a day's work.
Wow.
And this third one, just in the last 10 or 15 minutes, kind of roughed in this gate shape, and I'll show you what was inspiring me. And it was this temple entrance with the stone. And I might take some of the stone image and pull it across just to show how I do that, but this really caught my attention, and I love the scale of it. And you can see the alcoves here where there were statues at some point, and then the bases for the pillars that are all gone, and then the photographers down here taking the picture, just how large this monument is. It's gorgeous. So I like that, and I want to talk about this image here. This is David Roberts. If you're not familiar with David Roberts, he is an artist in the 1800s who went exploring Egypt and the Holy Land at that time. And I don't want to say it predates photography, but photography was a cumbersome type of thing to do at that time. So he would just sit and draw. And one of the things I love about his work is he shows it before the sites were actually excavated and all the sand was dug out. So with this you can see that it's just buried in sand. And a lot of his images are like that. So if you're a fan of Egypt and the Holy Land, Petra, and you love watercolor and pencil art as I do, I recommend David Roberts. Do a search for him. He's got a couple of coffee table books that are fantastic, and every once in a while you can find limited edition prints. All right.
Really beautiful art, yeah.
So I just
Great.
literally in minutes roughed together this shape, and then I threw in some mesas in the background on a separate layer. And that's where we're at. We have any questions from the community?
Not yet. Just Eric wanted to know if that was the same piece that you worked on at the beginning of the month. And yes, it is.
Yes.
We've seen the 90-minute, we've seen the 8 hours. So this is going to be a 24-hour stream, right?
No.
No? Okay.
Actually, Amber Rain has graciously offered to take one of the videos and cut it down to 15 minutes and quickly just show the process and set it to music using the 5 Guardians of David soundtrack, which is available along with the art book. And for those of you that are fans of the Action Bible, we are also releasing Sergio's work for all the comic cinematics that he did as a separate art book as well. And you'll see that as part of the patch of awesomeness.
Hey, Steven, it's a little hard for people to hear the Skype call. Are you going through speakers or something, or
I
is it just
am.
coming through?
Should I hit a different button?
Just try turning up your speakers a bit. Should fix it.
All right.
Might require some audio rerouting. I'm going to add someone. We have a special guest, Steven.
Excellent.
So let me just add him to the call real quick. And we are about to have a great conversation.
Fantastic.
Hello, Steven.
Yes.
Hello, sir.
We have 2 Stevens now.
Yes, we do.
Steven Donnelly meets Steven Nickel, also known as SteveSketches. I was showing you some of his work earlier today. He is a Twitch streamer, a fantastic artist, and someone who came around, and I sent him an email today, and I thought he would kind of be interested in what you're doing here, and I thought you showed a lot of interest in his work, so I thought it'd be cool to put you guys together to talk art.
Oh, that's fantastic. Steven, I saw your work earlier today, and it is wonderful. I really like it.
Oh, thank you, sir.
And I understand that you are doing some work for High Res Studios.
I am. Currently, doing... I just got finished with a couple of years of doing a skin concepts for their game, Smite, and been developing a lot of these characters from mythology, and then giving them these kind of cool and sometimes wacky and zany costumes that people get to buy and use in the game. And it's been a really fun project. I love doing character design and stuff. Currently, I'm in the process of the interview process for another position there that would hopefully, instead of being contract, would actually be full-time.
Oh, that would be fantastic. Is there any chance that that would be with Thomas Holt?
Thomas Holt. I don't believe so. I'll be working with a young gentleman named Nick Arnold on the Paladins game, actually.
Okay.
Thomas Holt is actually one of the environment artists, I believe.
Thomas and I worked together in Seattle when we were at Airtight. Yeah, we were art directors on Murdered Soul Suspect.
Uh-huh.
Yes. He is a great
It's
fellow.
small industry.
I miss him. Yes, it is. So if you get a chance, please tell him hi for me.
Absolutely. I will certainly try to remember to do that.
So as a character artist, is that more difficult? Do you just go down that route? What distinguishes someone who ends up doing concept versus someone who goes to character?
Well, there's it's all concept art. For instance, what Steven's doing here on his stream is environment concept art. Steve, are these matte paintings that are going to be in the game, or are these concepts for 3D pieces that will be created later?
These are actually tone and mood pieces just to get the vibe for one of the next environments that we'll be going to for 5 Guardians of David. And
Okay, all right. So is it like DLC content?
Ooh.
Ooh, I just said a 4-letter word, didn't I?
Maybe.
Maybe. 5-letter word. Maybe. Maybe. Not.
Maybe. But one of the things we're looking at is continuing the story in some fashion. And as we continue with that, it would be the time of Solomon, and Egypt and Babylon come into play with that. And so there's a lot going on in the Sinai. And so we thought we would start with Egyptian environments and what, some ruins and temples that you might find in the Sinai some 2,800 years ago.
I see. Okay, so these are, in fact, then concept pieces, or at least preliminary sketches to build on later.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, so what Steven's working on here is environmental concept art. What I do is character concept art. So I'll be the guy that does the drawings and sketches and paintings that eventually get sent off to the 3D modelers, and they develop that into a working character. And then, of course, that gets sent off to the riggers, the animators, the texture artists, et cetera, until it goes through the entire pipeline and is eventually put in the game. I'm just, on the front side of it. I work under an art director right now, and for designing characters for the game, and it's quite an experience. But in terms of the difference between environment art and characters, it's kind of obvious. One of them designs the playing field, and the other one designs the players, and that's about it.
Did you have more of a
Well
passion
put.
for characters, or did you just naturally just go that way, or?
When I was a kid, I was always drawing characters, and I always loved drawing. That's all I drew was people, and I really wanted to learn anatomy from a young age, and I was always drawing people. It just became my passion. I know other people that are just enthralled and love doing environment art, and that's just something that hasn't really piqued my interest as much as it has with characters. For me, my favorite artists are people like Norman Rockwell or Jesper Edgesing, and his illustrations with all that color and character. There's if you want to go back to ye old ancient times, who's the guy that does those gorgeous portraits? Rembrandt, right?
Yes.
Rembrandt does the portraits, yeah. So it just the stuff with that emotion, that character, the seeing people. That's what I like to draw most, is people, and that's just the way I've always been.
That's awesome.
What about you, Steven? How'd you end up doing environment stuff?
Well, back in the 20 years ago, in the 90s.
No.
Yes.
No way.
Yes, it's true. I'm that old.
Oh my.
I was only 5. No. I always wanted to do book and magazine covers. I was inspired by actually Norman Rockwell, Frank Frazetta, Michael Whalen, Don Mates, people like that. And that is what I was pursuing back then. And so I went to work for TSR, the producers of Dungeons and Dragons, and saw an opportunity to start doing those kinds of things. And in 2001, I got into the electronic gaming industry. And my art director at the time, Rob Olson, said, hey, we've got some people, they want to be character artists. Actually, this is John Hermanowski, who is the lead character artist on Dark Void and Just Cause 3 that we were talking about last week.
Right.
And, I'm like, well, I love characters, and I've done a lot of that, but when I think about where I want to go the rest of my life, I really love landscapes. And the thing that I love about electronic game development is building worlds. So about 15 years ago, I went through a bit of a paradigm shift and started focusing on environments. And I occasionally do characters now and then, but it's not my passion, and there are other people out there. So when the need arises, certainly, but for the most part, I really like environments. Stephen, as you said, the creating the place where the player plays, building that sandbox, I very much enjoy.
Well, I'm glad you enjoy it. Frees up space for more character artists.
Yes. And you are very talented. I have no doubt that Hi-Rez will grab you up. They would be fools
I
not
hope so.
to.
I've been trying to get a job there for 3 years.
So I take it you're in the Atlanta area, up there by.
I'm actually not.
You're not.
No, I live in Sacramento, California.
Okay. Well, you're gonna love Atlanta.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna really enjoy that weather they've got over there. It's gonna be awesome.
It's a beautiful city. Yeah, it's less expensive than Sacramento.
About 12% cost reduction all across the board.
Oh, that's nice. You've researched this. That's excellent.
So, Steven, how long have you been streaming for? How did you get started? Did you just say, going for it? Or
Streaming was something I started back in 2013, 2012, 2013. It was like really early 2013 when I started, and I was doing fan art for Smite. And at the time, Smite was in early beta.
yeah, I was about to say.
Yeah, it was like I just got in after alpha, I think it was. Anyway, the community was really, really small. There weren't really a whole lot of artists or anything, and the whole thing was just ripe for, fan art and all that stuff. So I just jumped in and started streaming art right away, and was able to build a following off of that. And ultimately, that's how I ended up getting my shut up. Ultimately, that's how I ended up getting my contract art position with Hi-Rez. Was through the fan art that I was doing for Smite. I did it for almost a year before I was eventually hired.
That's awesome, and that is great advice for anyone looking to break into the industry. If you have something you like, focus on it, do it. That's the best way to get people's attention.
Who's your favorite god? Who do you have one that you're like, that's mine, or do you just everybody is fair game?
Are you speaking in terms of the characters in the game Smite?
Yeah.
I like a lot of any character that gets into the fight and starts brawling right away. I like characters like Odin, Hercules. Hercules is really fun.
Yeah.
Just charges right into the thick of it, and it's just like, you can't kill me. And I love going 3 versus 1, and seeing if I can't challenge myself that way, and that's always a blast. I think my favorite character though in the game is probably Arachne, who isn't a god per se, but is included in the game as a playable character, and she's a lot of fun. Creepy spider lady, and it's just it's just such a wonderful game, and there's so many cool characters to play, and I don't have as much time to play it as I would like, really.
Are the same characters you play, are those the ones that inspire you for the art, or do you just look at character designs, you're like, yeah, I'm totally gonna do somebody else now?
Well, the thing is, I'm a concept artist, so when I look at art or characters in games and stuff, I'm always telling myself, man, I hope I can design something like this, or I could do better, or I'm constantly trying to think of something that I could create. It's kind of a selfish perspective, I feel like sometimes. But whenever I'm playing a game and stuff, I'm just like, man, I could make something that looks cool in this game, or I could make something. This inspires me to make something of my own. It's always inspiring to kind of just do my own stuff. It's not so much emulation as it is, just inspiration. I don't want to copy somebody else's concept, but I do. Seeing somebody else's amazing concept always inspires me to become better myself. So I draw a lot of inspiration from games, it's true, but it's not like I use them as reference either. I'll tend to use, either the old masters or photographs for most of my reference for my concept pieces, so that I don't end up just drawing a bunch of fan art.
That makes sense. Is that true for environment, Steven? Because I know you showed me that you will look at, like, I know we always talk about clouds, because you'll show me, well, you just take clouds and you paint over the clouds and you have beautiful clouds, or you do other things there. Is it similar that you can't really search for what's there already? You have to draw inspiration from reality and then mesh and match with your own imagination? How does that work?
A combination of both, and it really, for me, it depends on the mood that I'm in. For the most part, when you're creating something, you want to have that picture in your imagination, and you want to rough it out, have an idea of what you're doing, and from there build upon it. Use reference as a tool. Now, I say that when last week we actually, I'll bring that back up. That's a good example and a good question. So I shouldn't say last week, last month, as I remember, what did we use for reference? Oh, here we go. Yeah, actually, can't remember what it's called, Luxor or something like that. And so this was the image that I had started with, and just stretched it, broke it all apart, and adjusted the perspective to help build out where we eventually ended up at. And that was an example of, hey, I really like this picture and I want to do something cool with it. Take the picture and just do your thing. And this time around, it's literally looking at an image, just getting that inspiration in your head, and then going from that point to see where things go. Actually, I gotta keep this full screen. So it varies. I guess you could say there's a lot of ways that you could do it, and depending on what you enjoy as an artist, makes all the difference. So I'm actually going to merge these layers. Just call this base. Yeah, I'm happy where that's at. There we go. And so start thinking about more detail and information and what exactly. I don't know, Steven, you got a suggestion?
You mean talking about your piece here?
Yeah.
You mean how to build up on it?
Yeah, where would you go next?
The first thing I would probably do is add more light contrast, particularly in the upper right corner, just due to the strong shadows that we're seeing on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, I feel like there should be a very visible light source over there. And then building up atmospheric perspective in terms of pushing those rocks in the background, and then these two rocks in the foreground. Is there a way that we could create more depth between the two of them?
These two guys right here? Yeah.
Just those two. The archway itself, it's split down the middle. So
Yeah.
Is there a way that we could push the one on the left away from the one on the right to make it look like it's further away, or
Oh, without a doubt.
do we want to keep them?
No,
Do we want to keep them together?
Well, giving them a little bit of depth is always going to help.
I would especially want to push back those rocks on the far left, the smaller ones,
Mm-hmm.
in particular, just to separate them from the archway. I feel like they're distracting just a little bit.
So for those that don't know Photoshop, I'm actually using a dodge tool, and I have it set to midtones and about 15% exposure, and it works just like a photograph printing technique. So I can go in there and take these darker areas and just push them back a little more. Good call, Steven. This looks much better. something that you always want to do is make sure that where you are in your background, one side is darker, another side is lighter, and then you want to do the same thing for the foreground. So I'm going to switch to a burn tool, and I'll set that to midtones. And this one's, I'm going to go with 15%. And actually, because this is closer to the camera, just darken up the lower right there. And I think that starts to get a little more depth than what
Yeah, it
we
looks
had
good.
previously. I like those simple shapes.
So, Steven, I was
Yeah.
surprised you'd actually...
Which one are you talking to, buddy?
You, Mr. Nickel. Should I call you Steve, or do you want to go Steve and Steven? That might be easier.
I'll be Steve. It's kind of like my online.
Okay.
Everybody in real life calls me. Everybody in person calls me Steven, but
I never know with that. That's a tough name. That's one of those names you could go either way on. Both are somewhat formal. It's
No, it's not, dude. It's Steven.
Oh, that's what I always tell people. Is like my real name is Steven, but you can call me Steve. That's fine.
No, I don't do
you.
that. Steven all the way.
Steve, you're familiar with the story of David's mighty men.
Absolutely.
I was very surprised, and I'm happy to hear that you have the same enthusiasm we do about it. Do you have any fond memories of hearing that story as a kid, or is that a more recent discovery, or just a story that really stuck with you?
I grew up in the Baptist church, and as much as I love the Baptist church, I really didn't get a whole lot of the really cool Bible stories. It was always just Noah and all these different and the same things over and over every single week in Sunday school and stuff. And then I got older and I started getting more and more appreciation for the stories in the Bible. And not just the stories, but just the story of the Bible as a whole, and started reading it from cover to cover. Mm-hmm. And at that point, I actually sat down and I learned things of stories that I'd never heard before, like Abraham and his mighty men of valor, his 300 men. We've all seen the movie 300, right?
Yeah.
And so this movie 300, all the Spartans fight against the Persians, and the Spartans ultimately lose, but not before kicking a whole lot of butt, right? Mm-hmm. In the Old Testament, Abraham takes 300 guys, goes against the combined armies of several kings, and completely destroys them. How much more badass is that?
It's amazing.
Wow.
And so I
how come we don't see
really
that in the movie?
Exactly. And so then I kept reading further, and then I learned, I got to the parts about, David's mighty men and the words that were spoken of them. And my favorite story that I always tell people is when David said, "Oh, for a drink from the well at the gate of Bethlehem."
Right.
I believe it was.
He pours it out.
Well, when they bring it to him.
Yeah.
But that's just the thing. It's not. I mean, I understand the symbolism of what he does. He's not worthy of the gift that his men have given him. It's just, I just always pictured the sight of these 3 or 4 men that go charging into an army just to get to the well, just to get a drink from their king. All the while, drawing up the water while they're fighting and everything. Oh man! And please tell me that's a level in your game.
Actually, it is, but it's not as cool as you make it sound to be.
It is. That is a level.
Oh man, I could just be like, get to the well, take the well. Now hold the well and defend it while this guy draws water up. Now take it back to David. All the while fighting through an army. That's just so cool. And,
where were you a year ago? That is cool. We didn't make it that cool, and I wish we had.
I'm more than interested in being a game designer if you guys have an opening.
I will keep your name in the hopper. How's that sound?
That sounds really good to me, Steven.
And now you're gonna confuse me. And Steve, before we leave you today, make sure I send you a Steam key over so you can play it. You can tell us what you think. Maybe you can give Steven here some advice on the art direction of the game.
There you go. I would actually, Steven, I would recommend that you wait until we get our patch of awesomeness out.
Okay, when is that due out?
I believe we're targeting the
Ouch.
22nd is what we said, right, Chris?
Yeah, 2 weeks target date, give
Yeah.
or take a little bit. Yeah, I think the 22nd is about right. So give or take 2 weeks. But yeah, I will definitely make sure you play once we get that new patch out. You're going to think you'll have a really good time playing, especially if you already know the characters. I think that makes it that much cooler that you get to kind of preview what's coming. You're like, oh, did you cover that part? Did you cover that part? And
It just sounds so excited. You just emailed me earlier today, and I was like, oh man, I gotta check out what this Kingdom Games company is before I agree to anything, because I've been contacted by numerous shady people.
I'm sure you have. I'm sure you've been
really
contacted by
crappy
numerous great
companies.
people too.
And so I jumped. I'm not contacted by great people as often as I'm contacted by people that want to take advantage of a poor starving artist.
Yeah.
But I just looked into your company, and the moment I saw that Kingdom Games was really talking about the kingdom, I was like, oh, that kingdom. And I checked out the game that you guys developed, and the moment I saw the title, The Five Guardians of David, I was just like, frick yeah! Some of my favorite characters from the Bible in a video game? Yes, please. That's awesome.
Well, I hope you like it.
As a born-again Christian, I am very excited to try it.
That's awesome. I will make sure to get you a copy, but we're gonna make you go on honor system that you're gonna wait until that patch comes out.
Okay,
Yeah,
so I gotta wait weeks to play it.
Yeah, honestly,
you have to wait.
Steven, you'll have a much better time because one of the things that we're addressing is the feedback about the initial experience in the game, and it's that first hour or so. So we're improving upon it, streamlining it, just making it rock.
Tutorial parts are some of the hardest things to get right. I've noticed.
Absolutely.
They are.
It's one of the hardest things to do. If your game doesn't start strong, you never grab anybody. So I can definitely see how refining that is really important. So
we gave a lot of thought to how we would address it too, and we ultimately decided that the story that we're telling is the most important. So we'll fix it.
Okay.
As opposed to cutting it.
And we can, we don't want to spoil anything else, but Action had asked if we were talking about that David, and yes, it is that David. And let's just, I'll give you a little preview here, because this has been noted, is, yeah, you do get to fight Goliath in the game. So,
you get to play as David.
Yeah, there are select sections where you can play as David, yes.
That's pretty cool.
There's a lot.
Does it go? I'm interested in does it go into his mistakes, and does it
Yes, it does. Yes,
all
it
of
does.
all of the corruption of his advisors and his generals? There are a lot of those.
I think how I've described it in the past is what really appeals to me about the story is that David is a human.
Very
And
human.
He suffers a lot of things that we can all relate to when it comes to temptation, when it comes to mistakes, overreacting.
Big one's Bathsheba, of course, and that's what we hear about a lot. But then, getting and taken advantage of by a lot of his advisors and by his generals who are just, murder happy, or some of them trying to make deals with the wrong people. I mean, it's such a rich story, and it's really exciting to see you guys are trying to stay true to that.
I think, I want to give credit to Steven for this tagline that I've heard used a lot in passing. Go Old Testament. We're making a game that goes Old Testament.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
So Steven, what are you doing here? You adding foliage?
Yeah, I'm just kind of liking it.
Very cool.
Yeah, this is, I'm going to say 45 minutes to an hour, nice little spot illustration of a potential environment. This is the kind of thing that when you're working in a studio and you're just running through quick ideas and concepts, it's like, yeah, that's enough information to convey what's going on that someone could make a decision of, yes, go ahead and take that to the next level, or I don't like that, let's go with something different. And right now, since I'm making the decision, I'm saying we're going to take it to the next level.
Yeah, it's good to be the art director. I think my art's awesome. Let's put it in the game.
Well, a conversation I've had with Steven many times is that as an artist, and especially in the games industry, you just go in knowing that 9 out of 10 of your drawings are going in the trash.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Is that something that's hard for you to deal with, Steve, or is it just something that you've just accepted as that's truth, and ultimately the best stuff hopefully prevails?
I kind of went in knowing that the vast majority of the work I was doing was going to get shelved and never actually brought into the game. I'm actually really surprised that the number of designs I've done for Smite have actually been integrated. Currently, I've got 15 designs in the game, and it kind of blows me away. Like every time that they release something, like recently they released a couple of my skins, and I'm just like, that was on the shelf for eons. That was on the shelf since 2 summers ago. Why did you guys choose to put it in now? And
is it gratifying still, or is it like, oh, that's old news?
Absolutely, especially when they do it. Especially when they do it right. You know, sometimes there's certain decisions that are made that I'm just like, well, that's not what I had in mind for my concept. But my last trip to Atlanta, I actually got to talk to, in particular, the sound designers, and saying, you know, hey, you know, here's what I think the voice for this character should sound like, or here's what I'm imagining for this, to kind of give them an idea. Normally they nail it, but occasionally they'll stick a voice or some sound effects on the character that actually, I believe, decreases the sales.
Okay.
And that's my job as a concept artist, is to create something that sells. And if somebody in another department makes a decision that decreases the sales, that makes me look bad.
It's definitely tough when you're the first link in the chain, or you light that spark, and you have to let go of it, right? I mean, you don't really get a say once it gets to the next level.
It involves a lot of trust. It's true. Like, there's a lot of trust that goes into that. You know, having to trust my art piece to somebody else's, you know, opinions and artistic ideas. And that can be a real challenge sometimes. When it comes to working for high-res, if I'm turning it over to the modelers and animators and everything, I know almost every single time they're going to nail it, because they have done amazing work with the stuff that I've done and the stuff that I've seen them do in the past over at high-res. I've just seen their amazing stuff. And then occasionally something in sound design, or sometimes the texture will not be quite right, and I'll have to live with that, because there's nothing I can do about it.
Just move on and make something even cooler.
Exactly. And you know, it also doesn't help that I live 3,000 miles away.
Well, maybe it doesn't. Maybe it saves you sometimes from saying too many things.
You know, you actually make a really, really good point there.
This is from the chat, Stephen. Action 1976. The drawing has me imagining the Archangel Michael standing on top, looking down, wings spread, looking at weary travelers passing through.
You know, that's an interesting comment. I've actually never imagined Michael as a warrior. Oh wait, no, Michael? Oh, sorry, I was thinking Gabriel. Yeah. But yeah, no. I actually heard a theory about Michael from a friend of mine. A lot of people think that the term archangel is a common term in the Bible, but it's really not. It only ever references occasionally, right? And it only ever references one person, and that's Michael.
And why is that?
And why is that? Because Michael's the only archangel. And whenever it's talking about the archangel or an archangel, the only other reference that we see to it is in terms of the angel of the Lord. And then the angel of the Lord came down. And we all know who the angel of the Lord is. Do you know who the angel of the Lord is, Chris?
Oh man, you're putting them on the spot.
You're putting me on the spot. I am learning many things since I've come to Kingdom. I've learned many things, and I'm trying to learn more. Yes.
Yeah.
I've been trying to fill my brain as much as I can.
Yeah. Is it something you're really genuinely interested in?
Yeah, I was actually surprised how, like, especially when it came to, sorry, someone just sent me a private message. Spam? Yeah, it's spam, sorry. I was surprised, especially when I started reading 2 Samuel and some stuff in, what was that other book? I can't remember. The one where David's, like, regaling and telling all the, what is that?
Psalms.
What is it, Stephen?
I think it's Psalms.
Is it Psalms? Might be
Psalms is the songbook, and that's where David writes all of his songs.
That's what it is. So I was reading Samuel in Psalms, and it's like, this is actually really interesting. At parts it's almost like a puzzle, because it's you get different bits and pieces and different perspectives in different books, and I actually found it really a better read and more compelling than I thought it would be. And so when I'm learning this stuff, I go in with an open mind, and I just really just like, okay, let's learn this. And it's been really pretty positive experience for me so far, and I have learned a lot of really interesting stuff. And I think, especially when I look at David as a historical figure, you can really say this is a human being. And this is a human being that 3,000 years ago, it doesn't matter, we still deal with these same struggles. And I think that's what really makes the entire game so great, is when we're really tackling something that's relatable in a way that a lot of games, I think, have to go a different route. Like you might have to go, like Luke Skywalker, I think, is another tale of, like, stepping up to the plate when you need to and everything, but it's a little bit fantastical. Is this a bit grittier, a little more realistic?
In the Bible doesn't pull any punches like Lucas did.
No,
Lucas pulled a lot of punches.
It really does not pull punches, and sometimes you wish it would, and then it's like
sometimes, yeah. Well, with one of the things, I've got a friend of mine that has read the Bible, dozens of times, and it's always exciting hearing the things that he discovers each time he reads it, because it's so rich and so deep that you never get it all in one read. You have to read it so many times.
Absolutely.
And so he actually shared with me one of his revelations when he was reading the book. It was that as he's reading about the Archangel Michael and the context in which he's referenced, that Michael might actually be the angel of the Lord itself. And it's kind of I don't know how much I agree with him on that, but it's an interesting theory. But the angel of the Lord, if you ever you see in the Old Testament the words angel of the Lord, it's only ever talking about one entity. Because have you heard about the Trinity, Chris?
Yes.
Yeah. So God is, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Right.
The angel of the Lord is the Son.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I would think. That would make sense.
It does make sense.
Because there's a patriarchy in that statement of the Lord, as in just like a Smith's son or something like that. They've created a patriarchy with the language to say you are coming from something. If you're of this, then you are from something, which would be the Son.
Yep. And so the Father and his relationship to the Son. So whenever Moses is out and talking with what would it be, the angel? If it's talking to God, and if it ever says the Lord came down, that's the Father. But if it's ever talking about the angel of the Lord, that is the Son, and it's actually Jesus himself.
That makes sense.
Yep, it's pretty awesome, and it's always cool reading up on the prophecies of David in response to all of this, and how he talks about Jesus is coming himself too. It's always really exciting reading those prophecies and seeing how it all ties together. So, Stephen, I really appreciate how you're saying go Old Testament. And growing up in the Baptist church, I always felt that the Old Testament kind of got a bad rap, and so it's really good being able to see the Old Testament being brought to more light, because there's so much Jesus in the Old Testament that the Baptists don't always see. I've been hanging out with a lot more Pentecostal church, a lot more Pentecostal, much to my father's chagrin, and I've been learning a lot about Old Testament history and all the promises of the God in the Old Testament and everything. And it's just so cool learning about all that. So that's why I'm really excited to be able to talk to you guys about this in a video game context too. That's awesome.
Well, it's definitely not. Well, there are a few that would take elements, like I know you have, dare I say, Darksiders, which is kind of like a fantastical account of.
You got Darksiders, and then you've also got Diablo, and a lot of them build off of what they call Christian mythology.
Yeah, and that's more of a fantastical look at it that doesn't really want to look at a more historical perspective. And
some might even call those games irreverent in some respects.
Yeah, and exactly, it's not something that wants to look at the source and treat it in I don't think fair is the right word, but I don't even know if respectful is the right word, but they're not looking at it in a context of history or religious context. They're taking it as here's an inspiration for an idea.
God isn't a character in any of those games.
Right.
Any game that draws from Christian mythology, like Darksiders, like Diablo, God is completely omitted from the story.
Yeah, and that's most likely a trying to avoid offending people. I'm not sure, but on the other end of the spectrum, you have just games that are, poorly made. Unlicensed carts on Nintendo, or I think the classic cliche would be, Super Noah's Ark 3D, which was based off of, I think it was the Doom engine.
There was actually a Christian-esque game back in ye olden days. Oh man, we had to go around collecting apples and keys and stuff. It was a platformer.
I'm trying to think I think that one might have been based on Moses. That might have been one of the Nintendo ones.
I don't know. I actually played it on the PC when I was a kid.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. Yeah, and the most recent one I'm aware of is Catechumen, which came out in the early 2000s. That was like a first-person shooter kind of thing. But yeah, you don't see a lot of video games tackling the subject, and also you definitely don't see them tackling it in sort of a realistic art style, or really trying to focus on the story and like let's tell a story instead of
let's preach and teach a bunch of morals.
Right, and I think that's always kind of a difficult element to straddle, to say, here's the story, here's where you can get more information if you want to.
I'm glad you didn't mention the Left Behind series.
I forgot.
Thanks for not bringing that up.
Yeah, we don't need to go there.
We don't talk about that.
That
didn't happen.
That's a whole thing within itself, and it is what it is.
Yep. I'm sorry. I'm already sorry I brought it up myself.
I don't know what that is, but it sounds like that's a good thing.
You don't know what Left Behind is?
No.
It was a series created by I don't remember who created it, but
Tim
essentially
LaHaye and what's his nose? My family's got all the books somewhere around here. I could go look it up.
it was a very unpopular video game. So unpopular they tried to give away 1 million copies at one point, and they could not.
Wow.
Oh, it's the ET fiasco.
Yes, it was a PC series about. There was some stuff in there that we don't need to get into all the ins and outs of it, but I think even people who were religious could find plenty of things to be offended by in there. For various things. I think there are people who were not religious that were offended by various things. And I think they made 2 or 3 games before they stopped.
They made an entire book series, and then an entire children's book series, and then a few movies before those got, stopped making finally.
Yeah.
And then there were a few games, and I only ever saw one in a GameStop once, and that was a long time ago.
Oh,
and
that's probably
just thinking to myself, like, how...
Collector's item now.
Yeah.
You'd be lucky to find one of those.
Yeah.
But I mean, what comes to mind recently is I haven't played it, but everybody's gone to the Rapture. I haven't played, but I think
I haven't heard of it. What is that?
It's kind of a story-based exploration game, I believe, and I don't want to talk too much about it because I don't know all the ins and outs of it. I've just read about it a bit. Essentially, you're exploring an empty Earth where everyone's gone to the Rapture and you're left behind.
What?
Yeah, I think it's PS4. I want to say. Could be wrong on that. I'll have to look more into that. But my point is, like, even something like that is still going kind of like, well, here's something that's discussed. Let's run with that. What is that? What does that look like? Instead of here's the story of Goliath. Here's the story of David and Goliath that we've all heard. It's almost a cliche. It's part of our vernacular. Like, how do you approach that? How do you develop that into something that's fun and compelling? And how do you also build a world? What does an Amalekite look like? You know, what does an Edomite look like? You know, what do these people's cities look like? What do their camps look like? And I think that's
actually a question I want to ask Steven here.
good person.
So Steven,
to ask.
I actually am noticing that you're drawing, with your Egypt drawings and everything. I'm noticing a lot of desert themes and stuff, and I've seen just a tiny bit of gameplay, and a lot of it looks very arid so far.
Mm-hmm.
But wouldn't the time of David back in those times, before God, continues, persecuting the area due to the rebellion of his children, wouldn't the area still be flourishing to a degree?
It is, yes, actually. And before you joined the show, I was talking about that, how that particular part of the world was not as arid as it is now, some 2,800 years ago. It was much greener.
Yeah.
And so we take an opportunity. We don't want to give too much away in the game, but there are certainly some lush and greener areas, without a doubt. And I think they show up in screenshots occasionally, but for the most part, we kind of present some of the arid stuff. But yes, you are correct. It was much greener back then.
Okay. Well, thank you for affirming my beliefs there.
They are accurate.
There are some pretty cool. You'll have to tell me what the technical term for them, Stephen, is, but there were these mock-up documents that was like Amalekites, and it would show images of what they would look like and what historical representations of them look like, and like some core verbiage about like this is their like core features and personality, and this is what their cities and it's the area they lived in. You call those mock-up sheets? That's not the right word, but
Cut sheets.
Cut sheets.
Yeah. Reference sheets. So Chris, Stephen, we are running on an hour here, and I am running into a technical difficulty. My Wacom drivers have reset, so I no longer have pressure sensitivity.
Oh no.
I actually know how to fix that if you need, Steve.
Yes, go ahead. Do you have a quick fix?
Well,
Usually I just reinstall
what
them.
operating system are you using?
Windows 7.
Oh, that's perfect. Well, what you would do is you'll actually open up what's called services if you search in your program files. You pop open services, and it pulls up basically every driver on your computer. You go down to the Wacom one, and you pop it open, and you're going to see these little start and stop buttons. You're just going to hit the stop button, and then you're going to hit the start button. That'll reset your drivers and reset your settings, I believe. Now, it may not work right away, probably because your Photoshop is still open. So if you do that while your Photoshop is closed and then reopen Photoshop, it should work. I know it's worked for me in the past.
Okay. Now, I am taking a look here. And it's actually in the Windows folder, correct?
Services?
Yes.
Oh,
Lord.
I don't, if you just click down in your search bar and you look for services, just type in the word, it'll be these gears that pop up.
Yep.
And it's actually software. So if you pull up services, it's this, it's its own thing.
There we go.
And you pull out, it's got the gears on it. Very, very obvious logo. You scroll down to the Wacom drivers, and you just pop it open. You hit the stop button, and then you hit the start button.
Where are you, Wacom? Wacom Professional. Stop.
Yep, that's it.
All right, and then start.
Yes, sir.
Let's give it a shot here.
If this works,
I know, I'll be excited. I've learned something new today. Stephen, thank you very much.
I think he's fighting, man. I think he's fighting for a job. What more could you want?
All right, let's see what we can do here. Oh, wrong way. Stephen, thank you. That's fantastic.
You're welcome.
All right, excellent. Down to services.
But that was a
Stop.
problem that plagued me for years until somebody finally told me how to do that. And before, I was always turning off my Photoshop, unplugging my Wacom, plugging it back in over and over and over.
Oh,
And
yeah.
sometimes it would take 15 minutes to get back started. Now that I have that trick, it's just like, well, that's easier.
That is much easier. Oh, that's
Yep.
fantastic. Thank
There
you,
you go.
sir.
You can get right back to work.
I appreciate that. Yeah, actually, I'm getting rid of this stuff. I don't like it. All right. And, wow, I guess we should probably wrap up the show, shouldn't we?
Yeah, most likely. I know you've been battling allergies, and Steve, we really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us and
Yes.
come on.
Stephen, I hope you'll join us next month. That would be excellent.
Oh, certainly. I look forward to it.
Fantastic.
Great.
Chris, do you want to
Yes,
take us out?
we are Kingdom Games ATX. We recently launched our game 5 Guardians of David on Steam. You can find us on all your favorite social media sites at Kingdom Games ATX. And we're on Twitch once a week. I host a show with various members of the dev team, designers, engineers, artists, and then of course Steven is here first Thursday of every month showing you Photoshop tips and tricks and drawing up concepts and leaking all sorts of information he's not supposed to leak. And the past couple weeks we've had great people to come and chat with Steven about, the art process and all stuff. Action 1976, thank you. Thank you for watching and thanks for talking to us. And Steven, who has been chatting with us, is also known as twitch.tv/SteveSketches. And you can catch some of his stuff. Do you wanna point out any specific awesome costumes you've gotten into Smite, or do you want people to just find out for themselves?
Oh, if people want to check out my art, is it okay if I post links in the chat?
Absolutely.
All right.
If you want to, and you should definitely go follow Steven of High-Res fame at SteveSketches. Definitely follow him and check out his stuff.
Yes,
It's
amazing.
really cool. Really, really good stuff. And if you play Smite, make sure to check out all the stuff he does.
Yes. Community, thanks
I'm
again for
really
joining.
glad you guys liked my work, and it's been a real pleasure getting to know both of you guys. You guys seem like
Yes, it
really
is.
upstanding gentlemen, so thank you.
It's
Thank you
great.
very much.
We will keep in touch. I promise you that.
Yes. Community,
Sounds
thanks
good.
for joining us. Have yourself a great week. We'll see you next Thursday, as Chris said. Chris, I have a recommendation for you.
Yes.
I think you need to do a show with Travis playing the game, because Travis has mastered the skill of jumping between the 5 and just dominating. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm pretty impressed with Travis's gameplay.
Yes.
We can work that in.
Awesome.
That should work.
I would like to see that. Bye, everybody.
All right. Have a great week, everybody.
Thanks again, Stephen.
Thank you,
problem.
Steve.